Hello. How's everybody doing? So I hope everybody's had an awesome 4th of July weekend. This is 50 pips rocking and rolling in the house. So again, we're not making trade calls or recommendations because you and only you are responsible for the trades you may decide to take. The fact that you're listening to this means you've read, you understand, you accept all the disclosure disclaimers on the website, understanding that this is just some technical analysis for educational purposes only. So what's going on this week? So keep in mind that when we come back from the 4th of July weekend, we used to see some heightened volatility in the market. In terms of the week, there's not a lot on the data front. I mean, I think probably CAD is going to be the biggest potential mover on the data because we have a lot of data, and not only starting the beginning of the week with the building permits and the PMIs, but also later in the week, we also have those housing starts and the unemployment at the end of the week, right? And then we do have some unemployment data out of Australia, and we do have the bank rate decision out of the UK, and we have FOMC meeting minutes, but compared to what we've just gone through is fairly subdued on the data front. So we'll have to wait and see. So not a lot has changed, and we're going into July, August kind of chop. So broadly speaking, not too surprising to see things hovering in range. So it looks like a lot of people like the blank charts, so I'm going to stick to the blank charts. Again, most of the charts are on the blogs, and they're marked up with there's more explanation and all the levels are on them, but for the purposes of these Sunday webinars, we'll look at them on blank charts. So what I've selected here is basically 5 charts which I think are going to be the most interesting charts to look at this week. So we've got crude starting off, CL. So for the bigger picture, again, look back on the blog, we've discussed this a lot, but clearly what's interesting here is the fact that we've had a bit of a pullback. We've got a lot of geopolitical risk, but it's coming back into this pretty much this whole trend line, or this whole series of higher lows, and it should be interesting to see how we behave. I mean, we also discussed in the past about this this moving average cross, and the fact that we continue to have pretty much bullish expectations for this, and we'd expect it to hold a bit. And it's interesting to see how also those two moving averages will come into line with this trend line. Also, if you look in terms of a bigger fib off those lows or those highs, we'd clearly expect to see that 50 back, that 100, that 200 be supported, and most likely buyers bids coming in well ahead of that, probably at this dip low, right? So again, I think this is an interesting one for the week, especially into this support. Our broader outlook is still for rotation higher into the 111, 112s and higher, but clearly the focus is on this important support approaching, and to see if it can hold this series of higher lows on this sending trend line here. Okay, so having said that, we've seen a bit of classical action on the ES, and basically the upward rotation continues, right? We've been talking about the slow grind back all the way up into the 2000 level, and that's what's still in play. Clearly, the more we're stretched, and the more we continue to rotate this way, the healthier it would be to see a retracement, right? And the bigger the retracement can be and still remain in a healthy perspective if we do get that. But don't be too stubborn trying to catch the big high, right? The swing of your life short, because this could continue to stay stubborn more than a lot of people can remain solvent. Right here, what it looks like is that this final break above the 1900 is going to start to look like pretty solid support. So I'd expect any dips to still continue to get bought on the slow grind up into the 2000 level, but I continue to say that if you're flat, the most interesting, unless we get a bigger retracement, the most interesting trade opportunities will probably be to be very selective and look for opportunities to trade to the short side tactically into the week. But again, it's still holding a very strong bid tone. One chart which is interesting is USD JPY, right? This is a weekly, and we've talked about the fact that we were in this base build and it kept on holding these this lows, and I think this week will be interesting to see if we're finally going to move off of this base and start to rotate back higher or not. It continues to hold a bit, and this is a pretty interesting level. So when you see this kind of action, keep in mind that it's going to be very important, meaning that if we break below and we hold below, this could start to get a lot of traction to the downside, potentially starting to accelerate to the next pockets of support. But as this holds, this means that the upside rotation is still completely in play and that we will continue to try and grind higher. So I'm not too interested in all the small support resistance levels in the tighter range. I'm not interested in micromanaging supports. I'm not interested in looking at any kind of downward trend line here. What I'm focused is the big picture, and the big picture is that the fight is being fought here, and as long as we hold the support, the upward rotation is fully in play. Okay, and you can see this even if you're looking at it on a daily or on a 4-hour chart, that clearly support's still holding, and this is going to be a very, very interesting level. Then CAD, as we said, there's a lot of data coming out of Canada. It's going to be interesting to see how we behave. Now you see here we're started to move right back down, and we're coming back into the support zone. Now this level is extremely important because even if you go back on, let's see if we can we can't go back on this chart here, but if you're holding here on this weekly, right, what you can see is that basically this level has been extremely important for in the past, right? You can see how, broadly speaking, we've seen very aggressive sellers coming in, defending this whole level, series of lower highs for the moves back down. You could see how even when we pressed above it, we still have all these wicks. We've had very aggressive sellers coming in. Once we broke down, back into resistance, sellers coming in, and how aggressive we caught a bit ahead on top of it when we broke through it. So you see we're right back into this important level. So watch this whole zone going into the week, right? And basically what it means is that we're coming into extremely important support, and this will likely dictate the next big move, or that probably, maybe the move for the summer on CAD. Are we going to find support here, and are we going to continue to find the grind higher, or are we going to break down and see a move to the next pockets of demand? So again, I think this is very interesting. Another interesting level that could still be choppy inside that range, but clearly important for the next move in this pair. And finally, euro. Well, we've seen a lot of choppy action on euro, and basically what it all boils down to is, we've got these 35s to the downside, and we've got the 37s to the upside. So that's really where the fight is taking place, right? There's a multitude of possible short zones to the upside here, but the way this is trading, I expect all the front running is happening here, so the shorts are already engaged. So this is the make or break, and going into this week, expect more choppy action as long as we stay inside this area. What we need to see is a sustained break above the 3700 from a daily close perspective, or we need to see a sustained break below the 3500 from a daily close perspective. And what that will likely do is open up the pair for the next bigger move. So what that means is that if we continue to catch a bit above that 37, then we'd expect to see, stops getting triggered, excited, and some acceleration, possibly for 100 or more pips to the upside as the breakout here gets legs and we see an acceleration to the upside. Then we'll have to deal with these upside resistance zones. However, if we get traction to the downside here, we'd expect to see 100, 200 pip acceleration to the downside, until we get to the next pockets of demand into the 33s pretty much. So really this is, don't get confused about velocity of move inside range here. There's a lot of things you can look at. A lot of people will be talking about the 200 DMA getting sold. A lot of people will be talking about the fact that right here we're coming back into the 50 back of a move from the lows inside this range, right? 3500 into those highs, and there's a 50 back, but really there's a lot of choppy action. So I don't think there's a lot of edge trying to play tight inside this range. The edge is understanding it's all about the range, understanding that action can be very choppy inside this area, and waiting for the break to dictate the next move, and being very, very nimble and understanding that for now it's still pretty much a range play. Okay, so let's see what happens going into the week. Again, it could be, keep in mind we're starting to go through into holiday trade. Things can get choppy, and I think really the best advice I could give is focus on the bigger picture. As you can see in a lot of the updates, we go through a lot of detail. We look at very precise numbers. We look at very precise setups. Here in these last two updates, I've been on these blank charts also because fundamentally the bigger picture hasn't really changed. We're at possibly strong inflection points, but really the broader supports and resistances are still holding for the pairs that are chopping, and the pairs that are trending, they're still just progressing that trend. So we just have to be a bit patient. You know, volatility will come back into the market. We'll start to get moves again. It's not a question of if this is going to happen, it's just a question of when. So just be patient. Don't get chopped up inside these ranges. Don't chase the moves. Wait for the market to come to you, and usually things will be okay. It just takes a little bit of patience, and the more more experience you have, the more you understand that it's just a waiting game sometimes, and that things will happen. It just takes a little time. It's normal. Markets go through these cycles, okay? So I hope everybody has a great rest of the Sunday or rest of the weekend, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening. See you guys on Twitter bright and early. Hope you guys have had a great weekend again, and see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.